Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And before I start, I actually did want to really just thank you, Matt, and everyone else on the Stronger Network team for creating what you've done here, because I think this is so key to what's taking place in the church. It's been a weird few years, and a lot of things have shifted. And I think we're moving into an interesting time where the church is really grasping what it means to be in and part of a kingdom and what it looks like for the kingdom to be outworking in the marketplace. And today, as I talk about what being a founder has taught me about kingdom leadership, I think what you're doing here is really a part of that. I think to be able to be a good leader requires the personal development that you have to go through first. We have to get our hearts healed, our minds renewed, and go through that sort of like transformation process first, before we can lead others through that transformation process. And so this is kind of the place to be doing that, to go through that process and also learn like practical things along the way. So I just really appreciate what you've done by creating Stronger Network and making this a space for people to kind of to get kicked off with that and get filled and encouraged through it. So as a kickoff, I just want to explain a little bit about who I am so people kind of know. I'm sure you can hear by my accent that I'm not actually originally from the UK. I am American, and Irish, and I could say that quite literally. I know most Americans say they're Irish, and it's perhaps several generations back, but my mom was born and raised in Dublin, so I'm taking that one. I am, of course, living in London, in the amazing area of Greenwich, along with my wife, Jenny, and our two absolutely wild but wonderful children. I'm going to be honest and say I am an introvert, but I am developing extroverted tendencies. And very clearly, I'm on this kind of like learning journey through the world of business. I as a kid, one of the things I always said was that I never wanted the responsibility of owning and running a business and having to manage like people's lives and deal with all the stress of that. And that's right where God has me today. So, as I'm sure we could tell, he has quite a sense of humor. But it's also such a humbling thing to walk through, to know that God is willing to entrust people with things. And it's not just that he simply trusts us because he thinks we have like all the amazing skills and understanding, but it's also he wants people who are willing to lean into him and understand that, like, as much as we can do things, really, like, we're just a part of his story. And so what we are doing is stewarding things of God. And so it's amazing to be on this journey right now. And so my wife and I, we're currently running, and we founded this business called Kindred, which is really about creating tools and an active community to support the church and Christian entrepreneurs within the marketplace itself. We've served in so many different areas within church, whether that's kids, worship, media, just like the whole gamut. And so we've always loved the church and being a part of serving there, but also had this dream as we've shifted our lives like into the marketplace and doing running businesses, that we wanted to really marry up the two and be able to make an impact there. So for us, really, with Kindred, what it looks like is a sort of a three-part approach with like a faith-based directory, creating like an active online and in-person community, and someday operating apostolic hub workspaces to really support the both like faith and spiritual aspects of like life and business and character building, as well as those like practical areas of understanding business, and doing it all through like a kingdom-based lens. So as I continue, what I really want to do is really just kind of share the journey that my entrepreneurial journey that I've gone through, and through the story kind of leave you with some like tips, ideas, challenges wrapped up within that. And looking at this mostly actually from the personal work a leader has to go through before or as they're getting ready to lead and support those that they will be influencing. Because again, it kind of starts with us, really. I know, like, even in church, we talk about wanting revival and seeing, communities and the world transformed, but really that starts from within. That starts from inside each of us. So we have to do the work first. And once I kind of go through that journey and share my story, I want to leave you with really a few key considerations to keep in mind, even for your journey. So going right back to the beginning, my entrepreneurial journey actually, of course, does not start with Kindred at all. It starts with a whole different business, a whole different venture called Unify. And really, the idea was about matchmaking businesses and charities to help them increase their social impact. My background is initially in youth and community work. I had come across articles and things about several hundred youth centers just being shut down even within a single year. And that broke my heart to see like they didn't have the resources and things they needed. And I felt God had really downloaded some ideas into me about creating a matchmaking platform to be able to create more social impact and support charities that were doing amazing things. However, I will be honest and say I did not have the skills to create something like this. I did not have the knowledge to create something like this, and most definitely did not have the finances for something like this. But I still knew that this was so heavy on my heart that I had to just be obedient to what I believed God was calling me to do. And so this really comes, I think, down to like the first point, which is you have to start. Whatever it is you're holding on to, whatever dream that you may have, no matter how big and lofty it is or how small it is, it's important to simply start. And that's what I love even about like the word for a stronger network this year really is being moved. You have to just begin the process. And it may feel like you don't have everything that you need to do it. It may feel like you've got this lofty dream, or you think that you need to have the most elaborate business plan or enough finances and investment to be able to kick things off. But the thing is, when it comes to things like skills and knowledge, we can learn those things, we can develop those things. And really, it's about taking whatever you have in your hand, whatever God has already given you and blessed you with, being able to lay that before Him and let Him lead you in that, and remembering that you're the steward. So coupling just simply starting and moving is also trusting. We have to trust God when He leads us into something. He's doing that for a purpose. He sees something within you that means you can and are able to do this. Now, you might not be, you're unlikely to be able to necessarily do it all on your own, but that's where God wants us to bring it to Him, because He sees that He could trust us with it, but not just that He could trust you to bring it to Him so that He can lead you and guide you through that. So of course, I began to build. I went through the process of teaching myself how to program and code this platform, and I built it. I did it, and I began to market it and create this thing. However, what I found along the way, especially as someone who's fairly introverted, is I created a platform to hide behind. And of course, I did this at the same time when we were living in a world that is absolutely desperate for authentic connection, because I was doing this at the same time that we were in and out of lockdowns. And so I discovered really the importance of visibility. To be a good leader, like, you need to be visible. You can't just be hidden behind a screen. You can't, simply put up pictures and things like that. Like, you need to be seen, because when your face is seen, there's something that people can latch onto. There's something that people can trust. And you have to remember that whatever you're building, like, your story actually matters in that process. Like, it creates something that people can lean into and understand. And so you really just have to begin the process of doing things like networking, maybe creating a few simple stories on Instagram just to get yourself used to it, doing some lives, but just getting out there and beginning to show yourself is so key. And it may be difficult at first. It may not sound amazing the first time, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it, you'll see that transformation take place. And that's the same as well when it comes to language. Like, to be able to be a good leader, you have to speak, but you have to start somewhere. And so also coupling visibility, it comes networking and getting into community. Community is so important. Like, you can't go out alone. We don't need lone wolves out there. What we need actually is a community. Like, God has built us to be in community, just like how He's built the church. Like, we're all supposed to be connected and working together. And so you need to find that support group. And that's so key, because it's so hard when you're doing it by yourself and you're trying to wear multiple hats as a founder, to not get overwhelmed in the process. So when you can do it in community, you can be sharpened by others and help sharpen others too, just like iron sharpens iron. And so whether that's getting into a group like Kindred, where we seek to, like I said, like, couple kind of that spiritual faith building aspect of doing business as well as the practical on a daily basis, or another group, but just get somewhere where you can begin to walk out your journey with other people. And so fast forward a few years, and after a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, and extremely little growth with what we had initially created, I had gotten to a place where I was just feeling full of doubt, full of fear, tried so many things, and it simply failed. It failed, and it felt like it failed hard. And Of course, I took that to heart and took it really hard. But what I actually came to discover was that through the process of building out this other venture, that God was actually using that to break things off me, things that I had in my mind about myself, certain words that I would speak over myself. It was a process for God to take me through a journey to break off things that needed broken. And that actually God was using this time to pivot me into something new. And so when we realize that we're just stewards of something that God has given us, we have the ability to be ready to let go. And so from there, we began this process of really praying and fasting. We wanted to still do business, but perhaps doing it in a different way. And so bringing it back to God is exactly what we did. And that's what we got to do, is continually have a consistent relationship with God throughout the process. And what I've seen is this new revelation of what we're doing with Kindred now is, I've seen my network like double in size. I've been able to make much more genuine relationships than I ever had before. And the venture that we're on now, like I've seen it get to a much greater place than we had before in less than half the time. That's because I got to a point where I realized that the fruit came from letting go and giving God his place as like the owner of the business, and realizing that I was simply the steward. This was a place where I was ready and willing to pivot, as much as that felt difficult. And so you have to learn to like love what you do fiercely, like have so much passion for it, have so much passion for the people, but also remember that you also at the same time need to hold it lightly. It's important to be passionate about it, but it's also important to be ready to let go if God brings you to a moment of letting go. And so while pushing to sort of achieve goals and create Kindred and build what we've built, as a founder, you're wearing so many hats. One minute you're in finance, the next minute you're doing customer support, then you're coding something, creating a website, doing graphics, doing social media, and it can be such a stressful situation to put yourself under. And you want your business to do well, but you're also learning to try to juggle this. And I think this also is really great when it comes to leadership. It's not just about, being a good leader isn't just about one aspect of your life, but as you grow and develop to be a leader, it's actually something that takes place in all areas of your life, not just simply within business. And you want your business to go well. You want to have great friendships. You want to have a great family. You want to make sure, like for me, one of the things we're doing is home education with our kids. There's so many different facets to life that you want to do well. And I found myself getting into a place of stress and burnout and freaking out. And that starts, when you're in that place of stress, you begin to start taking that out on the people around you. And after really going back to God and bringing it to him, I felt such a deep conviction that what I realized had been taking place was that I was like putting each part of my life into separate compartments, and found that actually that was what was part of what was creating this place of stress. And God really gave me a new perspective that just because I'm saying yes to one thing doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying no to everything else. In fact, in the life that he's given us, whether it's your business and your family or whatever that is, it's all part of one story. It's each piece is like an important puzzle piece for a fuller picture, a fuller, like holistic puzzle. And so I had to learn to not compartmentalize everything and turn everything into a hierarchy, but I realized I had to work on my heart and my mind so that I could handle those things, and realize I'm not spinning loads of plates, but actually what I'm doing by looking after my family is just as important as working on my business, and is just as important as, learning, like working on my education or whatever that may be, like holding those things and realizing each one has its place, each one has importance. And so as I kind of get to a point of wrapping up, I just want to touch on a few key things to consider in your journey and what it looks like to found things or be a leader. And so I think, again, just going back to it, like it starts with letting God lead, praying and having consistent communication with him. God knows you, but not only that, God knows your audience. And so if he knows your audience, then you know that you can trust him with your business decisions because he knows how to reach the people that you're trying to reach. And so someone once shared with me something really interesting, actually, when we were talking about like stewardship and running businesses, is that like we know that God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He's the author of our stories. And so if that's the case, well, for example, he's the author of Kindred, he's the author of Stronger Network, he's the author of whatever is taking place in our lives. And so we know that he knows the future. If he knows the beginning from the end, in a sense, it's as if he's walked out already the things that we are doing. So we can completely leave it in his hands and trust what what he's leading us into. And so through that, it means we don't have to make decisions out of fear. We can be in complete confidence knowing in what he's leading us into. You know, as a leader, it's also important that we consistently realign our hearts and our mindsets with the word. So one of the things for me really has been redefining success and what that looks like, whether that's in a team or for yourself personally. It's very easy to try to define success in the way that we see it or in the way that the world sees it in terms of like numbers and money and things like that. Now, that's not always a bad thing. Those things do show growth. However, it's easy for us to get so focused on that we forget what true success looks like. You know, when we look at Jesus on the cross, we see just the disciples, the Romans, and everyone else who was standing there watching Jesus on that cross and being beaten. They felt like all they saw was defeat and loss. They thought that was it. Everything was over and what was going to happen next. However, with our amazing hindsight here in the future and having the Bible, we can see now that actually this was Jesus's big moment of success. Like this was life altering, life changing. He brought success. He was able to grasp the keys of the kingdom again, and he was able to give us freedom in life that we didn't have before. And so we can clearly see that success may not look to God like what it looks like to us. And of course, I'm not minimizing the grief that we may feel as things take place. You know, I definitely went through a process of grieving, moving from one business to another. And it's important to walk through that place of grief. But we can also at the same time lean on God, knowing that he can turn things into a success. And just as we may, you know, need to kind of redefine what success looks like, we also, as the Bible leads us to do, not to despise small beginnings. You know, don't minimize the journey that you're on, because yeah, it would be great to experience success immediately, but that's not always the case. Perhaps sometimes as a leader, God is actually preparing you and your character for the success and the growth later on, and preparing you and your character for those that you're going to influence. And so just as I kind of draw to a close here, you know, one kind of last thought on visibility. You know, we see, of course, that Jesus is our example for visibility, and for him to be the leader that he was, he had to be visible. He was not just holed up, hidden in the synagogue. Yes, there was a time for that learning and that education and that development. But we see that like he had skills. He had public speaking skills. He performed miracles. He knew how to do carpentry. He was walking, talking, working in the marketplace. So we have to get out there and be visible. And you know, you can't influence people if you are not visible, and you can't lead people where you haven't been. So when you do go through things, your experiences aren't actually just for you, but they're for the leading of and sharing with others. And so if there's one thing that I do hope you leave with today, really, it's like the understanding that to be a transformational leader, it requires personal transformation first. And as you allow God to work on you and you actually do the work, you'll see then the growth of your business. You'll see the health of your business, your employees, your clients just absolutely grow and be transformed, because what happens in you begins to be outworked in the lives of those around you. So this is where you'll really begin to see it play out, is through the personal work that you do first.